Okay, we're here again with Mark Kapner with a graph showing the usage of energy, the cost of generating energy in the state of Texas. And we're going to have Mr. Mark Kapner describe to us this graph and tell us a little bit about uh, the cost of energy. Hello.
Okay, hi. My name is Mark Kapner, that energy guy, and we frequently get questions about comparing the true costs of electricity, generating electricity in Texas by the five principal forms of energy production. Those are natural gas, coal, nuclear, wind, and solar. So the UT Energy Institute has done a study called the True Cost of Electricity, and we've taken their data and we've compiled a very simple bar chart shown here. And let me explain some of the assumptions here. To begin with, you can see, contrary to a lot of conventional wisdom, solar and wind are truly competitive today with natural gas. They are less expensive than coal or nuclear. Now, the costs that we use to compile these bar charts here really consist of three elements. Each one is the sum of three components. One is the capital cost. The second is the operation and maintenance cost. That's basically manpower. And the third is the fuel cost. Now, of course, for wind and solar, there's no fuel cost, but they all have capital cost and they all have operation and maintenance costs. So let's take a look at the numbers. To begin with, the y-axis here is dollars per megawatt hour, and you see that the wind and solar are just about the same cost, $60, a little bit less for solar, a hair more for wind. Natural gas, I have two bars, and the reason is that there are two very distinctly different types of natural gas plants in Texas. The most efficient is combined cycle. It's basically consists of a gas turbine followed by a steam generator followed by a steam turbine, and that's the most efficient, and therefore the costs there are actually a hair below the $60 a megawatt hour. The other kind is called simple cycle gas turbine. Those are less efficient and their cost is higher, as you can see. So some of the elements of cost here, and let me explain the assumptions made. Very important assumption in this chart. This chart shows the true levelized cost of electricity, that is the cost over the long run, assuming that you're building a new power plant of each technology. That's why the capital cost is one of the cost components. And in fact, the capital cost is the lion's share of the solar and the wind. They have no fuel cost, and their operation and maintenance costs are relatively low. So, very important, just to repeat, these costs are the costs of generating electricity, including the cost of building a new power plant of each technology. And one of the consequences of this bar chart here is nobody is building new nuclear plants. They're just way too expensive. Nobody's building new coal plants. There are a few plans to build new natural gas plants, but the lion's share of the new construction in power plants in Texas are the most economical, the wind and the solar. Now, let me just touch on some of the elements that influence these costs and the assumptions that were made. I already mentioned the assumption number one is these costs include the capital cost of a new plant spread out over the life expectancy of the plant. And number two, these costs include a factor called the capacity factor. Very important. What's capacity factor? Capacity factor figures in extremely important in wind and solar. Capacity factor is defined as the ratio of the actual amount of energy that would be generated over a period of time, typically a year, divided by the rating in megawatts, which is basically the size, the electrical size of the plant, multiplied times the number of hours in that time period. So the number of hours in a year is 8,760. So if we have, for example, a 1 megawatt solar power plant, the capacity factor of that plant is the ratio of the actual megawatt hours it would generate over the course of a year divided by 1 megawatt times 8,760 hours. Now, that's capacity factor. The capacity factor varies a great deal depending on your location, and that's true for both solar and wind. For both solar and wind, in this bar chart, we assumed that the plant would be located in a place in Texas which has the highest capacity factor that you'll find anywhere in the state. To simplify, that means we're looking at solar in West Texas, the sunniest part of the state, and we're looking at wind in those areas of Texas which have the strongest wind. So the capacity factor, again, that ratio of actual energy production divided by what could have been produced if the plant were running at its full rating every single hour of the year. So for solar, the sunniest parts of Texas give us a capacity factor of 25%. For wind, the windiest parts of the state give us a capacity factor of 40%. And those numbers we used here. Now, natural gas, coal, and nuclear capacity factors are quite a bit higher because these plants can run 90% of the time at their full rating. So that concludes our discussion of the comparison of the 5 types of electricity generation in Texas: gas, coal, nuclear, wind, and solar. Thank you. I'm Mark Kapner, that energy guy.
All right, thank you, Mark. And we have just illustrated a graph here of the cost of generating electricity in the state of Texas, and we're going to be back again to discuss more. If you'd like to subscribe, please subscribe by pushing the subscribe button, and make requests for analyzing your energy bill by that energy guy. Thank you.